first of all, we have got to understand that there is the East, and then there is the West. And in the West, religion was dominant. Between the 5th and the 10th centuries, after the Christian era, they were called the Dark Ages, when the church was very authoritarian. And in the 15th century or 16th century, there was a great rebellion and an awakening in Europe, whereby the authority of the church over the lives of the people was overthrown, and man declared his independence. And he said, I don't want this religious tyranny. That is, it's a tyranny of the institution of religion. And in doing that, man secured his freedom, his intellectual freedom, and his freedom and liberty as an individual to express himself and to go behind the truth. And that led to the movement of science and technology. But something unexpected has happened in that the baby has been thrown along with the bathwater. And because religion is not represented merely by religious institutions, religion is also represented by the scriptures and by the writings of all the significant prophets and masters who contributed to that religion and who lived the life of that religion. And so the whole thing was thrown away. And that has been a very great loss, a spiritual loss to the West. And because of which the role of the father confessor and the church father has been replaced in modern times by the psychotherapist and the psychologists who are counselors. They are the modern counterparts of the church fathers and the father confessor, the healers. And so a very big shift has happened. But man essentially has lost guidance for his inner life and for his spiritual life in the West. Now this has happened in the West. And concomitant with this loss of clarity and loss of great joy and fulfillment in the inner life, has concomitant with that has come to pass the booms of science and technology in the form of greater mastery over nature, the conquest of nature, and greater control resulting in comforts and luxuries, and understanding the very subtle and deep way in which nature works at the macrocosmic level and at the microcosmic level. And that is the science and technological civilization that the West has created. But in that, there is no room for religion. There is no, God is absent. Life of the spirit is absent in the dictionaries of science. Now this has happened in the West. And in the East, there has been a completely different approach where religion has been the wellspring of every religion, of every civilization in Asia, by and large, throughout Asia, including China. Philosophies and religions have been the sources of inspiration for the people. And those societies, Asian societies, they are more, they have no difficulty in accepting religious authority, and they have no difficulty in living a life of austerity and simplicity, and a life that is contemplative, and a life that is devoted to the ultimate discovery of the divine, and blending the divine and expressing the divine in the day-to-day life. So they have no difficulty with that. And that is in sharp contrast to what is in the West, where authority, religious authority has been thrown overboard, and man has become free. And but the question is, though he has become free, intellectually free, the burden of sorrow has not diminished. And if anything, coexisting with an explosion of comforts and luxuries and technological innovations and discoveries, coexisting with all that is the inner despair and the desolation of man and his interminable burdens of sorrow. So that is the position in the West. And that is why all genuine Western seekers who are completely finished with the pilgrimage of Artha and Kama, the quest for bread, pleasure, name and fame, they go to India. Because India is obsessed with a spiritual life, is obsessed with a quest for developing a harmonious relationship with the divine, blending with the divine, and living out that life in unity. And so they go to India in search of that, because that has been snuffed out in the Western science and technological civilization, and to such an extent that the word religion has lost its respectability in the West. And instead, some other thing has taken shape as an alternative, and they call it spirituality. And to my mind, this looks tremendously absurd, because religion is not the creation of one great master, the Master Jesus. I'm talking about Christianity. But the Christian religion and the Old Testament, the religion of the Jews, it is the cumulative wisdom of a large number of prophets and seers. And you must be profoundly ignorant in order to be recalcitrant and kick off the wisdom of innumerable prophets and seers, because by assimilating their wisdom and by listening to their teachings, our lives would have been ennobled. So ultimately in the West, there is material prosperity with spiritual poverty, because you have renounced and kicked off your religion. And in India and in Asia, we don't have spiritual poverty, we have spiritual wellness, because the family and God, and the Guru, they give us solace. But we have outer poverty and we have outer difficulties in life. We don't have enough comforts and so on, because that society, that civilization did not consider that so important, and that civilization is also so old. It is 7,000 years old at least. And historians and archaeologists are saying it is 9,000 to 13,000 years old. The prehistorians are saying that. And because that civilization is very, very old, the Indian civilization, it is more like, think of an old man who's 90 years old. Now his vitality is definitely ebbing, unless you put him through Kaya Kalpa, where there is a resuscitation of life and he becomes young and youthful again. That can also happen. Ayurvedic rejuvenation. But this is the East and this is the West. And the East is influencing the West, and the West is influencing the East with its power of inquiry, with its insistence on understanding, with its approach to science and technology. And the East is impacting on the West, asking the West to calm down, and to turn inward. And so there is an exchange and a resonance which has been going on probably for the last 500 years, definitely from the time the East India Company was founded, around 1600 Christian era, when Englishmen came to the shores of India with the intention to trade and to dominate and so on. So this is, and we, unfortunate individuals that we are, all of us, we have all come under a national force, a national pressure, a cultural pressure, a social pressure, a religious pressure that is very subtle, but it is all pervasive. And we don't know whether we should declare our religious allegiance or pretend that religion is obnoxious and pretend that we don't need religion, that we are self-sufficient unto ourselves. We don't know what stand to take, honestly. And that's the quandary in which we're all. And in the East, there is another quandary, that how to marry the religious tradition with the religious authorities with modern life, which is based on inquiry, which is based on unlimited freedom and liberty for the individual, and how to marry these two contradictory swings in human consciousness and in collective consciousness. They are swings in opposite directions, and we are struggling with all this. But then, at the end of it, what is our problem? Our problem is that we have a huge amount of sorrow in our lives, and we do not know how to deal with it. And for most people, it is terra incognito. That is an unknown territory, even though their feet are very squarely planted on the terra incognito, but they claim that they don't know anything about it. That's part of the problem. The unconsciousness is part of the problem. You deny that sorrow exists in your life, and therefore you don't go after any medicine to heal that sorrow, to eradicate that sorrow. But if you look at all the religions in history, and you look at the central emphasis in Buddhism, where the Buddha himself came face to face with sorrow, and the whole mission of Buddhism is to, and you and sorrow are not going to meet again in life. So that is the whole thrust of Buddhism. So it's the religion which has got the foremost awareness and the foremost sensitivity to sorrow. And then after that comes Christianity, which is very sensitive to sorrow. And because it's a much younger religion, very sensitive to sorrow, a lot of awareness. And you'll see a lot of Christian saints talking a lot about suffering. And then Hinduism is also talking a lot about suffering, but because it is a very, very old religion, it is 7,000 to 9,000 years old. And therefore, the emphasis on sorrow has waned. But you can still see in the Gita, for example, the Gita begins with Arjuna's awareness and awakening to sorrow. And the whole lifetime work of the master Krishnamurti is in the same direction. The awareness of sorrow and sensitivity to sorrow and understanding of sorrow and the transcendence of sorrow, so that sorrow is eradicated root and branch. They are not meeting with it again.
So Guruji,
those who wished,
now to eradicate this sorrow as an individual, we have to, you are talking about Hinduism and Christianity and Buddhism giving, showing the path. So are you suggesting that people who have moved away from religion, how can they come back into this, because they are too scared, they have too, there is a big black mark in with all these religions, but
yes,
they are still seeking for ending their sorrow and suffering. So can you speak to that a little bit in terms of how the people can come back to this glorious path of religion and understand that it is important for them in their lives?
Right. You see, you just have to look at the world, and you can see that because you don't go back to your religion, you don't go back to your ancestral religion, you're ashamed of it. You're ashamed to make a declaration that you are a Christian or you're a Hindu, or you're not so ashamed when it comes to Buddhism, because Buddhism, being an intellectual religion based on inquiry, is highly respectable in the West. But Hinduism is not as respectable as Buddhism, because Hinduism is 200 religions. It is like a banyan tree with aerial roots. is too vast. It's got a spectral diversity, mind-boggling spectral diversity. Everything from alpha to omega is there. So because you can't go back to your ancestral religion, you go to yoga. And when you go to yoga, unfortunately, you get caught at the body level and you don't even go into consciousness and you don't study Patanjali's Yoga Sutras, and not to speak of going all the way to the Atma. And you go to shamanism, and you go to Taoism in China, or you take some other philosophy of life, Confucianism, or you go to Zen Buddhism, and Buddhism is in bad shape because they started worshipping the Buddha instead of understanding the teachings. And so, or you go to Indian gurus and Indian masters and Indian traditions, you go to Sikhism, you go to Jainism, so you go to a whole host of other places where you're supposed to be addressing and solving this problem of sorrow. But are you getting to it? Or are you very confused in that search? So you're not yet come to the bullseye. What's your position? As somebody told you that sorrow is the essence of it all, and that you've got to come to grips with that sorrow, and somebody has told you not to budge from that position, or have you got caught in methods and meditations? Because a tantric method, a yogic method, and meditation is a lovely escape from the unsolved problem of sorrow. Every meditation of yours, chakra dhyana, is an escape from this. And a time will come when your turning away from sorrow won't work. It'll get back to you. And those are the portals we are talking about. What are those portals? When a misfortune strikes you like a thunderbolt, so forcefully that you have to start inquiring and thinking for the first time in your life. Or when you have a dreadful disease like cancer or something else, or the present pandemic which is there, and almost death is walking in the streets, and death is making a visitation into homes. That should be a wake-up call. And then so, if you're 60 and 65, if you're 60 and 65, finished with material life, then you've got to inquire into the sorrow. You've got to understand the sorrow, because it's an unfinished chapter in your life, and that's the summum bonum of life. And if you're not solved it, this life is a wasted life. Having been born as a human is squandered and wasted. Okay. So is that okay for you, what I said?
Yes, Guruji. Yes, Guruji. Thank you, Guruji. So what you're saying is whenever there is this sorrow in our lives, instead of running to a meditation, instead of running to a yoga, instead of running to some kind of a, some kind of a healing process, you are suggesting that we first become aware of it, first listen to that sorrow, and begin the journey there.
Of course, that's the essence. It's like, you see, it's such a big tragic comedy that it's like a man who has got cancer, and then he's having pain in his belly, and he's not sleeping properly at night, and so every day he pops in 2-3 painkillers, and he takes some treatment, and he's under the delusional belief that he's well. Now you've got to take that cancer by the horns, and that cancer is sorrow. But there's no teaching in the world except the teaching of Krishnamurti, which is the awareness and the sensitivity to sorrow in the bullseye. You got to get there, and you got to move away from mainstream society. For how long? You got to move away for a year, for 2 years, for 3 years, in order to come to grips with this unfortunate nemesis of the material life. It's a consequence of having lived a material life recklessly. And so the other side of pleasure is pain. And you get it, and it descends on you like a thunderbolt. Then you've got to deal with it. So, but if you're not going to, like, getting enlisted in the army and serving the army for 2 years in any country, in America, in Singapore, and so on, so you don't invest that time, you don't pay attention, then the burden of sorrow is going to annually increase by the year, till what happens then? Then you become burnt out. You become more and more dead human being with no elan vital. And intelligence is snuffed out. There's no intelligence. And all the senses are benumbed and dull. But then there's money in the pocket, so you think all is well, and you say, after all I wanted was only success, and I've got success, but what is the use? You're a dead human being. You don't have integrity. You have conflict. In every relationship you have conflict. You're not honest. You're not speaking the truth. You are managing with the tools of hypocrisy and lying. That goes on for some time, till one of the portals opens up for you.
Another big handicap that people are also facing, Guruji, that it is to face this problem, to face their challenge, their problems with relationships, or any kind of crisis for them to face. One of the big handicap is also they are looking for somebody to guide them. They are looking for a teaching or a guru to follow, because this is a very unknown territory to most of humanity. So they do not know which way to go. So the only way they know is to live in that suffering, or to find some kind of a solace in that suffering itself and not let go, because that's all they know.
Right.
So how can one take this bold step? It's because it takes a lot of courage to be in that suffering and to really understand it and get that empowered with that.
You see, you've got to be, first of all, you've got to be dead serious. That's the most important thing. And it's a question of priority. Now, most people prioritize and their job and their economic well-being, their job and their earnings. Now, that has the first and the last priority. Everything else can go to dogs. I'm not bothered, because my money flow must never end. So that's your setting. And unless you change that setting in your mind, and it dawns on you that no, this is not the way one has to live, because I'm just dragging my feet and I'm a very unhappy person. So the realization has to come, and you must know that you're burnt out. You must know that you don't have inspiration. You must know that you're floundering, and that the commodity called intelligence is very scarce in your life. You must, by turning inward, you will discover that this is the human condition, not only for you, for the whole of humanity. And only you can make the discovery, nobody. Your guru cannot lead you up to it. No, sorry. Only you can make the discovery. And your guru cannot eradicate your sorrow. You've got to get involved in it, like you're involved in your profession. Like you may be involved in your married life. Like you may be involved in some hobby. You may be involved in the study of yoga, and you give your life to it. Look, you've got to give your life to it. And if you're not going to give your life to it, then, sorry, you will be where you are. And you don't mind that. You don't mind that, because the whole of humanity is in the same boat. So what you will do is you will compare notes, and you will say, I'm not any worse than all my friends and all my relatives, so I'm doing good. I'm not kind of fallen out of a running train. And my family is good. I'm good. I've got 2 children. And so you will postpone and then it goes on. But then a time will come when the knock will be so hard that the main door of your house will be broken by sorrow. And then you can't flee from it anymore. And that's the call of God.
So one
and
of
such
the
a moment has to come.
Yes, Guruji.
Now you should not ask. Somebody else should ask.
No, one of the questions from the panelists.
Go ahead, Madhu. I will take the next question.
Okay, thank you, Sandra. Why only sorrow should produce one to seek? When dissatisfaction and everything is Maya, realization sets in, then also seeking can begin? Please clarify.
Okay, you're asking very good questions. You see, dissatisfaction is just 1% sorrow. So that's not a dose which is strong enough to capsize your boat. You're traveling in the boat of illusion. And if a big fish comes and knocks against your boat, the boat jostles this way, that way. But then the boat does not capsize because what hit you is not a shark. It's only a big fat fish. So you continue till a shark gets at you. And you call that the wrath of God. You've got to become tremendously sensitive. Now, if your investment is in the material life, which definitely is important, it definitely has its place in the human drama, that the material life is important. The quest for bread, the quest for pleasure, the quest for name and fame is given to us by the divine. It's not a fancy of our egoistic mind. It's given to us. It has a place in life. But then a time will come as the wheel of time churns that what was given to you by the divine will be taken away by the divine. And that's for your good. That's for your good. And that's when, that is the birth of you as a seeker. You need a sudden jolt. Now, if you don't have a sudden jolt and you're not shaken up by it, then the seeker in you won't be born. Now, the seeker in you has to be born, and then the seeker has to become intoxicated with the search. He must go to 10 gurus, he must study 10 religions, and then the seeker must die. Then there is nirvana for you. That's the process. And you got to prioritize it. If you don't prioritize it, then this miracle won't happen for you. The question of how much, but mainstream society will not encourage you. Mainstream society will in fact only discourage you to go on this quest. It won't give you a pat on the back. Hey, Ricardo, you're so good. You went to India when you were 16. Mainstream society will not pat you on the back. Mainstream society will ostracize you and will think that you're a very bad example for society at large, that you're not a shining example, and therefore you become an untouchable sooner or later. Oh, he's living every year, he's living 4 months in Ramanashram. So don't speak to him because he'll convert you. Goes on like that, goes on.
Guruji, following up on that question, we have a question from Laura Troncoso in Spanish, and she's asking about the portals, which is kind of what you're saying. If these portals are opened on an individual basis, or are they opened on a collective basis?
Individual basis, depending on the divine architecture, the divine conspiracy, the divine patronage, which is playing out in every life. Now you can have a portal opening when you're 16, as in Ramana Maharshi's case, and the portal gobbles up the individual, the small boy called Ramana, or you may have a portal opening as soon as your son gets married, as soon as your daughter gets married, or you may have a portal opening at 62 or 63, when you come face to face with existential suffering because you lost the meaning and the salt of life. You lost it. And it's very hard to come to a recognition that I don't have salt in my life. That I'm a robo, I'm intellectually very dull, I'm burnt out, I have no inspiration. So I have to drink every day because I've got to forget myself and then I have peace. So I have to drink every day. I have to go with my friends every day so that I won't have to face the self, which is the monster. And so the portal, there are many portals. In a given life, there could be 4 or 5 times a portal is opening. But society will not encourage you. Your divine architecture may be helpful to you, or if the divine architecture, which also has a say in your receptivity to these portals, you may not take that portal. You may not walk into it. And so next bus. And the next bus will come after 25 years. The last opportunity. I don't know if I'm making sense.
Yes, you are, KVG. But may I suggest that you present maybe the how we are living our daily lives, really from the ego or from the little self, and that is what causes all of our sorrow. And we've all lived through a lot of sorrow, frustration, fear during these last 4 months of that we have been confined and facing our greatest the fear of getting sick and so many economic fears. So in a way, we've all been presented with a bus, and we should all take opportunity of this bus by being more in contact with our soul and living our day from our Atma instead of being driven by our ego and everything that's happening outside of our lives.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Sandra, for reminding me about that. See, first of all, we don't know what these words mean. The word, the self, we don't know what it means. And the word, the Atma, no idea at all, absolutely. It's terra incognito. Now the self is, so let me describe that self. Now the self is a moving, darting energy. It is in consciousness. It has got many hues. It's not just coming in one color. And it is the essence of your life. It's moving, darting energy. Now, what are its hallmarks? Its hallmarks are, it defines itself as the body, point 1. The self defines itself as the body, and then works for the permanence of the body, for the economic security of the body, the bank account of the body. And then it is divisive in its mentality. It's impossible for the self to recognize the unity of life. And we just have to remember the golden words of Roman Catholic Christianity's greatest sage, Bernadette Roberts. What did she say? She said, in creation, everything is divine except the self. And then that should be a kind of inspirational bullet for us to go behind the self, to find out what the self is and how was it formed and what is it actually doing. Is it doing good things or is it doing evil things? And it is the serpent in the Garden of Eden in Genesis. That's how it speaks. It gives you temptations. It intoxicates you with power. It says you can be as powerful as God. And that's how the fall of man happened. So beautifully described in Genesis, the Bible. So Eve was the first to fall, then Adam fell. So you got to understand the whole thing. Now, right now, you cannot understand a word of religion. So you will disrespect it. You will kick it off because your mind is got cacophony going on all the time. Now, it's the cacophony of the self. Now, when the cacophony completely subsides, the mind is vacant, the mind is empty, then every scripture will be self-evident for you. Whether it's Christianity or Hinduism or Buddhism, it will be self-evident. You need a vacant mind to understand, because the prophets who gave this religion, who wrote the scriptures, their minds were empty. So when you have an empty mind, you will be in resonance with those prophets, with those seers, with those sages, and then you will understand everything. And then no more complaint that religion is superstition and religion is unintelligible mythology, religion is metaphoric, and none of that, the whole barrage of complaints coming from ignorance. So you're allergic to religion.
Natalia is asking, how do you awaken the mind?
There's no question of awakening of the
Guruji?
mind.
Yes, Natalia is asking, how should you awaken your mind and how should you purify understanding? And if you could also explain a little bit what when you speak of divine architecture.
We're going to go slowly.
Oh, I think
I'm trying to develop the thing.
If you can explain what do you mean by divine architecture?
Okay, you want to go into that? Okay, good. We'll go into that. Good question. Very good question. You see, because we are all children of our religion is science and technology, right? Go with me. Our religion is science and technology. Because science and technology for us is the absolute truth. And religion is the creation of immature minds. And our tallest scientists are atheists who give guidance to the rest of humanity to throw off their religions. Nobel laureates, all of them, but they can't understand a single word of religion. Their minds are crippled. Good for doing mathematics and good for thinking about atomic structure and things like that, but subtler things. But then comes a very rare genius like Albert Einstein, who immediately grasps in the palm of his hand the essence and the water of the religious life. He got it all. Why? Because he's a deep thinker, he's a contemplative, he's a creative genius. So it came home to him. But other scientists, no. The minds are not lofty, the minds are not sublime, the minds are immature, therefore you can't get it. Okay? So now this divine architecture. Now notice that all of us are children of science and technology, children of the modern age. So there is a very subtle force penetrating into our life and dominating and shaping our thinking. Dominating and shaping our thinking. Allowing the thinking to surge in certain directions and then suffocating the thinking and putting a moratorium on the thinking when it veers in the direction of the religions. Because they're supposed to be bad for you. You're supposed to be a weakling to depend on God and to study the scripture. You're supposed to be a weakling. You have no mind of your own. So, these are very subtle compulsions. There's a cultural compulsion, there's a religious compulsion, there's a compulsion from science and technology, there's a societal compulsion, there's a family compulsion, there's a compulsion from your friends as to what you should do and what you should not do. And then what happens to you? Then now you become a slave. You become a slave of that. Why? Because intelligence is not yet awakened in you. And when will it be awakened? When the mind is empty. The empty mind is awakened. Why? Because in that emptiness, in that space, the Atmic Prajna will throw its radiation. There is space. And in that space, that Prajna will throw its luster, will throw its majesty, will throw its grandeur. And you will understand everything.
Maybe then now is a good time, Guruji, to go into Krishnamurti's teachings and your teachings about how to empty the mind.
Oh, Sandra, you want enlightenment by today evening 9 o'clock, it's not happening. Okay? It's not going to happen, no. Your mind is always racing. I've been watching your mind. I've been watching your mind. But I've not put any moratorium on that mad mind of yours. But as your teacher, I have to tell you that your mind is mad. Like the minds of the whole of humanity. And that insanity is called Maya in the Hindu world.
Yes.
What is that insanity? That insanity is continuous thinking, unnecessary thinking about every trivial thing in life. So now, because we are all worshippers of science and technology, we are all worshippers of the intellect, we are all worshippers of the Nobel laureates, of all the great men of our times, and we don't respect musicians, we don't respect artists, but we revere the scientists. And then, in the dictionaries of science, does the word all-merciful, the divine, God, does it exist? Does divine intelligence exist? Is compassion a word found in the dictionary of science? No. So it is just not in your worldview. Then where is it? Then you've got to belong to an Asian civilization, an Asian society, which is based on awareness of the divine. And that's the basis of your life. Awareness of the divine. Sensitivity to nature. And sensitivity to all the things that are going on in your consciousness. And so in the East, in Asia, they defined the goal of yoga as the cessation of all thinking. In the West, you celebrate thinking. You celebrate thinking, put it on a pedestal and worship it. But in India, people said just the opposite. They said, when the mind is voided, you have the highest intelligence. And that intelligence is called prajna. And the master Krishnamurti said, the highest form of thinking is negative thinking, no thinking at all. All of this you got to discover, not me telling you. You got to discover yourself. And you will discover when you become a true seeker, not a phony seeker, not a window shopper, which you're all now, you're all window shoppers. Not serious. No, you're not serious.
So, Guruji, question from another participant, Guruji.
Oh, 1 minute.
Yes.
Sandra has stoked the fire. I'm supposed to tell her what is divine architecture. So first I said, so God doesn't exist in our dictionary. God doesn't exist in our life. And to have a puja room at home and to worship the divine and to say a chant is the doing of a weak mind. So now, if you're intelligent enough to fathom and to perceive the reality of the divine, if you're intelligent enough, which means you've gotten away from the madness of society, then you will know that you're driving your car is your life, you're driving it day in and day out, and then suddenly you find that you want to drive from Mexico to Florida, and suddenly the car went to Albuquerque. It was hijacked by somebody and it went to Los Angeles, then it went to Colorado. So who is doing this? The divine is doing it. He is the mischief maker. And that divine architecture is there in your life. You think you're the driver of your life? You're the master controller of your life? No. The wait to discover that there's another master controller who will never come before you and tell you through a spoken word, or he'll never send a letter to you, he will never phone you to tell you, Sandra, I am the master controller of your life. Because that master controller is self-effacing, he's anonymous, he's in the unmanifest realm. So he will not ever say that. Now it's a mathematical puzzle for you, it's a Rubik's Cube for you to find out where is the master controller of life. You got to find that out. And that's your enlightenment. When you find out really, not through belief, not even through faith, but through dedicated search, you have to make your own authentic discovery of the address and the whereabouts of the master controller of life. And then you will know that divine architecture and divine conspiracy and divine patronage are what he does by meddling in your life. And you're very happy to allow him to meddle in your life. Like there are two lovers. And aren't they very happy to allow each one to meddle into the other's life? Because that divine is your beloved. And you will become the slave of that beloved. And when you become the slave of that beloved, then the supreme intelligence shines through you. You don't become a fool, no. By becoming a slave, you don't lose your mind. You lose your mind and you gain intelligence. It's a long journey. It's a long journey, not to be completed in 1 year, not to be completed in a retreat. And the question is, how many of you have actually undertaken this journey? Now, it was my fate to undertake this journey, part of my divine architecture, at the age of 23, when the divine slapped me in the face and got the car of my life into an accident, so that I'm stuck, finished. The divine is also doing that to you. He is not sparing you. He is not kissing you every day for your life. He is slapping you left and right. But you're so thick-skinned that you don't wake up to it. Okay, so much for divine architecture. Divine
Following up on what you're saying, Guruji, Sebastian Orellana is asking that if everybody can wake up, or there's simply people that are not going to be able to wake up in this lifetime.
Yeah, there will be some people who cannot wake up in this lifetime. Bad news. Bad news, yes, that's part of the divine architecture. You cannot wake up. But then the whole thing go into this question. Now, who is asking that? Who's asking all these questions? That is the self. Now, with the cessation and the voiding of that self is the beginning of the spiritual life. All your questions are nothing but smoke. They have no significance. And when your mind is empty, you understand everything. What does a scientist do? A scientist or a great musician in a creative moment, or a sportsman, an Olympic champion in a creative moment, is his mind active or is it silent? Sandra?
Active.
Active.
Huh? No.
What?
If it's active, you will fail. You won't get the Olympic medal. Finished.
Silent.
It has to be absolutely silent. No thinking. When Dhoni or Tendulkar, when they hit a ball over the commentator's box for a 6, there is no thinking. The body and the mind are in samadhi. And in karate and in the Japanese table tennis, is the mind active or is it silent?
Silent.
Right?
Silent.
Have you seen the film Karate Kid? It's all about silencing of the mind. It's not about body postures, for God's sake. It's about voiding the mind. And purification can happen only if you void the mind.
So that is the only way to be in that infinite bliss, Guruji, by keeping the
no infinite bliss. No, those are all dreams of the self. No. The self is very good in dreaming, very good in conjuring up, very good in concocting cock and bull stories. Huh?
Then how do we remind ourselves to be in that?
You have to see. You got to get into it, and a time will come in your life when you have to get into it. And I am only looking for people who are at the portals that I have mentioned. I am not looking for all and sundry. You know the kind of retreats we do. We do international retreats, and it's always only for about 25 people maximum. And we don't do more because you don't qualify for that. Because you got to genuinely be knocked down on your feet. And then you can. You have to. The seeker in you has to take birth. Not the seeker who is doing window shopping. Not that seeker. No. Not that seeker. No. The daredevil seeker. The daredevil seeker who will not respect gurus, who will walk into a guru satsang with his shoes on, making noise, okay, rebellious, tenacious, is on the go. That's what a seeker does. And you have been that, you know that. I'm not saying anything new to you. And then what are the other questions? Okay, we've got about, we've still got time. Okay. Now,
Sankarji,
the Spanish-speaking people, questions.
Yes, we have a lot of questions, but one is a person called Suma. How to remind ourselves every moment about the infinite bliss? And the other question is, how can an ordinary person be not confused by over-information?
Right. See, as I told you, all the questions are smoke only, okay? Because there are three kinds of seekers, okay? Now, the first seeker is so tamasic, so dull, that he will not ask a single question. He is density personified. Okay? No questions for him. Why? Because he is so dense. He is the earth element. Now then, there is a Rajasic seeker who will ask 2,000 questions and who will trouble his teacher like Sandra Morphin. Okay? Good. That's good. Now, third kind of seeker is the greatest fellow. What does he do? Initially, he will definitely go to some teachers and he'll ask questions. Then, as he matures and comes into the vacant mind, then he will not go to any guru anymore, and he will have the question. And it's like nursing a small baby in your arms and then kissing the baby and caressing the baby and playing with the baby, and then the question will answer itself. He does the homework. He has got the maturity, he has got the depth, he has got the silence to fondle that question, to play with that question, to be with that question, to go for a walk with that question, to dine with that question, to sleep with that question. Now he becomes a seer. A seer. When you give your life for the discovery of truth. So that is a sattvic kind of seeker. Sattvic, who is not impatient, is waiting upon the truth, will wait for the truth to illumine. And this is a long journey. This is a very long journey. I'm telling every one of you, this journey has to go throughout your life till your last breath. No easy swaps for anybody. No. And even if the mind is voided, it's a pilgrimage. It's an endless pilgrimage into deeper and deeper mysteries. Because the divine is infinite. And you cannot solve that infinite mystery. And you cannot describe that infinite mystery in words, in poetry, in all that kind of thing, in music. No. It's an ineffable mystery. And you've got to be with it. And you've got to be with it. And you've got to qualify to get into that. And you've got to study. And initially you can ask other people, definitely. But a time has to come when you will work with yourself. You will be your own teacher. You must come to that level of maturity where you become your own teacher. That is Krishnamurti's message to you. That otherwise you're not going to flower. And then there's a divine conspiracy. Along with the divine architecture, there is a divine conspiracy. What you want to do, the divine will veto and say, no, I don't grant it. Finished. And what you did not work for, the divine will come and give you a kiss and pat you on the back and say, Sandra, take this as a gift. Divine patronage. So watch your life. You'll find all these things happening. Study your life. Look how the divine is absent in your life and also present. You can't identify the divine. This is the divine, that is the divine. No. Now fathom the mystery, crack the mystery of the divine by looking at events which are happening in your life. And the astrologers are very lucky people because they study all the time divine architecture, divine conspiracy, and divine patronage. All the time they're doing this. It is the darshana which emphasizes on this. Divine architecture, divine patronage, divine conspiracy. Okay, I want some more questions from the Spanish people.
Yes, there's a question here is from Maria Jose Badaraco. Is that how can we get to this state of no mind in the day-to-day living with if we are in this agitation what all the world invite us to put our attention out there, no?
Good. Okay. Good question. You see, man's condition is this. Now, whatever you present to anybody, you say, now, by Sri Jyotish Star software is the greatest in the Vedic astrological world. Then immediately the self says, I want it. Then suppose you talk about BMW car and then, or Jaguar, or what other cars are there? Rolls Royce or something. Yeah. And then immediately the self says, if it can afford it 50%, I want that. Now, watch this. Watch the movement of thought. Watch the movement of the self. Okay? Now, all the movements must fall silent. Is it possible? Is it possible? That is the journey. That is the journey. You must be interested in that as a seeker. If the seeker has taken birth, then the seeker is interested in that. And no guru, no master can know your life better than you yourself. Go with me? Go with me or not? Yeah. Now study your life. Study your life. Be contemplative. Be in solitude. Don't always be in crowds. No. The spiritual man is one who is in solitude, who is contemplative. He is not rushing out to malls. And during this pandemic, which has descended on all of us, it's quite possible that many seekers will actually be born like how a baby is born. You know how a baby is born? Baby is born from a mother, right? But the seeker will be born from where? From the mother called suffering. From there, the seeker will be born. and he's so full of energy, first you go and talk to him. He might give you a resounding slap. No, that's the proof that he's a seeker. Okay? Because he's energetic, he's ebullient, and he's dead serious. So that seeker has to be born, and it's a journey which you have to undertake. Now, I ask a small question to all of you.
Guruji,
Now, when you want,
Guruji, no, just to following up, there's another question related to what you just discussed. It's coming from Natalia in Spanish as well. And she is saying, isn't the urgency of this quest another form of illusion? Did you get that, or shall I repeat?
Yeah. I'm wondering about the origin of the delusion.
Okay.
Yeah. Because see, the self cannot discover anything. Please understand. The self is reckless, mindless, smoke, and darting energy. For anything to be revealed, the self has to be silent. Now, if you are a good scientist or a good musician or a mathematician, now in your most creative moments, many of the scientists, they go for walks. They go for walks themselves, and they're very silent, and they're deeply thinking, and they have a question. They're not jumping. Now they're staying with that question. They're pampering that question. They're caressing that question. They're living with that question. And then maybe in the dream, or maybe next morning, the answer will come, or 3 months later, or 3 years later, the answer may come. Now, that is the mood of discovery, the mood of an inquirer, the mood of a mumukshu, a one who is seeking moksha. Now, that passion is a very good thing. It is not a bad thing. In fact, in the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali, it is said that one who has this passion, he will reach home fast. And one in whom the passion is not kindled, is very dull, he lacks inspiration, then he will be proceeding at a snail's pace. Because his mind is not, haven't you seen expressions like this? In the world of science where I was working for some years, one of my professors, he told me, we were talking about another professor, and this professor told me, Shankar, he has lost the fire. You know the expression, he has lost the fire? You're getting it or not? He has lost the fire? So he's no more creative. Yeah, passion is gone. The creativity is gone. The intelligence is gone. So what's his state? He's dead. Not physically dead. The mind has become tamasic.
Guruji?
So,
and there's a question from Fabiola Yanez in Spanish as well. It says, what role does the mind play in this awakening process? Why is it so restless? When you say that we should look into our lives, is it that this mind process goes through the unconscious and it's giving us messages to guide us in our awakening?
Smoke. Whole thing is smoke. See, you've got to, now where is the drama of life going on? There are two theaters for each of us. Two theaters. One theater is called body. Another theater is called consciousness, or more crudely, mind. You've got two theaters. And a divine tragicomedy is going on in the theater of the body, and it is also going on in the theater of mind, theater of the mind, or theater of consciousness. Now, man is essentially made up of 3 dimensions. It's got 3 dimensions. It's got the body, which is the grossest dimension. Then he has got the mind or consciousness, which is a subtler dimension, the emotional body. Then he has got a soul, which is the subtlest. Now, how come the whole of humanity, they will say, yes, I have a body. They will say, yes, I have a mind. Yes, I have consciousness. Yes, I have cacophony. They'll say all that. But when it comes to the soul, nobody will jump in joy and say, yes, I have a soul. Because the soul is revealed only to awakened mind. Only when the mind is completely voided and is completely still, then you know what that soul is. And that soul is not a noun. It is not a piece of rock. It is not a mango. It's not a pineapple. It's not a substantial thing. It is called the Christ consciousness. It is called Atma. You can temporarily believe in it. Keep it as a provisional belief. But that's not good enough, because that will not help you to dissolve the tumor of sorrow. You must discover the deeper dimension of your being, which is the soul, which is the Atma or awareness. And then the tumor called sorrow is gone. Then you know that you are the soul, but then you've got a pericarp on you. What is a pericarp? Pericarp is the orange peel. The orange peel or the peel of any other fruit. The banana peel, the orange peel, that's only a surface coat. And then deep inside is the juicy stuff. Is the ananda. Is the intelligence. Is the elan vital. Is the beauty of life. And all of this you've got to discover yourself. And when you discover, you start living. And prior to that, you are only seeking pleasure and avoiding pain. And then having desire and then fear. That's all. So in that limited space of desire and fear, and then pursuing pleasure and avoiding pain, your life goes on. And you want to end the drama? Now, like you all registered for this. Now, to whom are you going to register? You've got to register with yourself. You're not going to register in the Amanaska Yoga Satsang. No. You have got to get interested in this as an adventure. You know, man went to the moon, you know that, right? And man is going to Everest. He's going on Himalayan pilgrimages. He goes to Galapagos Islands. Then he goes to the Rock of Gibraltar at the tip of Spain. He's going to hundreds of places for his excitement, for his ananda. Now, he has got to subscribe. Subscribe for my channel, you see in the YouTube? Yes or no? Now you've got to subscribe. And you've got to become the pilgrim. You've got to become the seeker. And unless and until you do that, you have not graduated to the highest sphere of life called dharma and moksha. You are only seeking and you're only questing for bread, questing for pleasure, avoiding pain, questing for name and fame your whole of life. And in the process of questing for bread, questing for name and fame, questing for pleasure, you accumulate impossible amounts of sorrow. Impossible amounts. And then you start screaming. You start screaming, oh my God, save me, please save me. Well, you built that house. You built it, you tear it down. Why are you going and asking somebody else? You tear it down. But the fact is, why are seekers not taking birth? Because life is sweet. Because we are all basically divine beings wearing the mask of a human being. Everybody is divine. The lizard is divine. The cockroach is divine. The cat is divine. Every human being, great or small, is divine. Every human being, good or bad, is divine. Every human being, big or small, is divine. But then he's wearing a mask. Now that's part of the divine architecture. And you've got to come to that discovery that the whole of life, including the trees and the insects and the clouds and everything, everything is nothing but the divine doing this delirious dance. And then you join in the dance as one with the source and as a part, because you have a part of a body. And you've got to get there. And you can get there only if you're interested. If you're window shopping, you're not getting there. Somebody has to tell you that. This is a long journey. This is a long journey. It's a long quest.
You were asking a question, Guruji. You said that you wanted to ask a question to all of us.
Before I can ask you a question, you are shooting 10 questions at me. How can I ask any question? You don't give me a chance.
Go ahead, Sandra.
No, I want the Spanish-speaking people, because they're more in number. I want them to speak so that we can get the... And another thing, now that the process has started, that we are asking these questions, you see, if you look at the traditional religions in India or Christianity in the West, you look at the traditional religions, it's supposed to be a great thing to have belief and faith in the Master Jesus and in the religion, which may be Hinduism or Jainism or Christianity or Buddhism. Supposed to be a great thing if you're a believer, supposed to be a great thing if you have faith. Now, why is it so that they say it's a great thing if you have faith? Because why do you need that faith? Why do you want that belief? Can any one of you answer why you need that faith? Why you need that belief? Who can answer that question? Why do you need that belief? Why do you need that faith?
To give us hope.
Arunji, come on, you speak. Demute yourself. Donji, please demute. Okay.
For superficial psychological security.
There you are. You know it. You know it. So every time you get hurt, you get a little bruise, immediately run to your God, run to your Guru. Say, please give me your blessings. I got hurt yesterday. It should not happen tomorrow. This is your language? How immature. How immature. When will you go to your Guru and discuss the truth with your Guru? When will that day come, or will it never come? When will you tell your Guru that I want to understand? Or that word is not in your dictionary, like God is not in the dictionary of science. Understanding is not in your life at all. True or not? No, not having no appetite for it. No appetite for understanding. Why? Engrossment in materialism. Deeply engrossed. And what is Sankara talking about? We are so happy. Every day we are getting a new happiness. So why do we need why do we need all this sophisticated teaching? We don't need all these things. Every day my morning coffee is enough. My walk in the garden is enough. When I drive my car, I'm in bliss. I don't need any of that. So I'm not looking for you people. I'm looking for those people who are knocked down so badly that they cannot get up. Okay? And this medicine, which Nisargadatta Maharaj called it the ultimate medicine, last medicine, is only for people who can come through the 4 portals. Okay? Only for them. Only for them. And a lot of those people are coming and meeting me. They're talking to me. They're talking to me. Very serious seekers are talking to me. And so that is the wavelength at which I like to meet people. I'm not interested in meeting window shoppers. I'm not interested in meeting people who are saying, please give your blessings. No. Yeah, thank you, Arunji. Now, some more questions from the Spanish people I want to hear.
I have another question, Guruji.
Please go on.
It comes from Ivan Matus. He is asking, what is the meaning of the loss of passion after having been very passionate? This loss of passion is like being spiritually dead, and even there's a lack of physical energy.
Got a very good question. Best question so far. My window. Best question so far. Okay, now listen carefully. Now, everybody wants pleasure, and we have to understand why. Why man is so drunk on pleasure? First, we got to understand that. Now, because his intrinsic nature, he is a blissful being, his intrinsic nature. Before incarnation, he was a blissful being, and after death, he will be a being of bliss. Therefore, that is his samskara, this ananda, this blissful nature is his very samskara. So now that samskara is not going to let go of you, so even after you got the body, so every day in your life, you want some form of excitement, some form of ananda, some form of sensory delight, you want it through food, or through wearing nice clothes, through travel, through sex, millions of ways. But you want the delight, you want that ananda. Okay? Now, the Almighty, He is very smart. Okay? We think we are smart, but He is smarter than us. You know what He did? He dangled a carrot in front of us so that all of us will go running behind it. Okay? The other side of the carrot is nothing but pain. Okay? So as you fall into the swimming pool of pleasure, crocodiles will bite you. And then you'll start screaming. And then you will come out of the swimming pool or not? Sometimes you may not come out also, you may be killed by the pleasure. Okay? So, pain is a concomitant of pleasure. And when the pain catches up with you, you will become a dull human being. Your mind won't work. Your mind won't be sharp. Now think of this. Think of this. In your left hand, you have a very sharp knife. Very sharp knife. Like what you use for cutting very thick meat. So sharp. On the right hand, you have a small stone which is round. Okay? Got it? Now, when the mind is not voided, then the intelligence is like that round stone, very dense. And when the mind is voided, that intelligence is like that sharp knife. Okay? Most of your minds are like that stone. Dead. No life. No intelligence. Even if I crack some joke, you won't be able to get it. Because you're so engrossed in that materialism. And therefore, Krishna says in the Gita, Krishna says, therefore Arjuna, draw your sword of discrimination and slash delusion to pieces. Krishna says, become aware. Become aware. Sword of awareness. And that is, and you've got to learn the whole thing. You've got to learn the whole thing. Think of another very funny thing. Now, you're all scientists, you're all technocrats, and you're all engineers, and you're then media professionals, you're bankers, you're financial consultants, and so on. Now, everywhere, in every one of your subjects, do you think clearly? Do you understand your subject, or you never understand your subject? Tell me the truth. Is there a thing called understanding in your life?
We do understand.
You do understand. But when it comes to religion, how come I never hear the word understanding at all? It's totally absent. Instead of that, when I open a book of religion, every page I see only faith. Faith, 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 belief, faith, belief, faith. What is this nonsense? What is wrong with you? When are you people going to think? When are you people going to apply your intelligence to understand anything? Or it's not necessary, it's good enough only to run behind somebody, to follow somebody, to run behind somebody? Understand. And if you don't give your life to something, can you understand that? Ricardo, if you don't give your life, can you understand?
No.
No. No. Many people must be telling, we came to the wrong satsang.
Guruji? In Cami Retamal is also asking in Spanish that what would you recommend for participants to read to start understanding this language and this process of self-knowing?
we've got to go slowly. First of all, we have 3 satsangs. And I'm saying that like in all the subjects, like whether it is an accounting or history or philosophy or medicine, take medicine, or engineering, you have to discuss, right, with your professor. You discuss with your professor, you understand the subject, and you discuss with your friends, you discuss with fellow students, and that way you get a grip on the subject. Now, you got to discuss the whole thing with somebody who is equally interested like you. You must find a fellow seeker, a friend. And if you have a good teacher, then you can discuss with your teacher. And the teacher may not warm up if you don't discuss at all. But the moment you start shooting questions, even the best in him will come out. So you got to start understanding. And you got to, because the whole, my work is completely based on Krishnamurti's lifetime work. I'm not able to go into it. I'm trying to develop it slowly. It's based on the lifetime work of Krishnamurti, and I want to share a lot of things about who this master is, Krishnamurti, who is he, and how do we understand the whole thing. And I want, it's good that you're asking questions, and I certainly want more questions. And we've got to go step by step. We can't immediately leapfrog to an advanced stage. We can't do that. And everything that we talk, it must become your truth. It has to become your truth. Otherwise, it's got very little value. Otherwise, it's worthless. It has to become your personal truth, your own discovery. So you got to think with me. You've got to consider with me. And then it will happen instantaneously. And that is the way it has to go. So let them read Krishnamurti's book, Freedom from the Known. Freedom from the Known, Krishnamurti's book. And if they are greater seekers, then I will administer a stronger medicine. Freedom from the Known is a mild dose, starting minimum, 250 milligrams. Okay. Now, if you want a strong medicine, then Freedom First and Last, with the foreword by Aldous Huxley. And you've got to study it like how you study books in college and in the university. But maybe all of you passed your exams without studying any book. That's also possible. Huh? sorry. That's also possible. In India, it happens. In India, it happens a lot. That you don't read too much. And last minute, you mug up something and you go and sit in the exam and then you pass. You got to study. And in the higher spiritual life, without study, without diligence, there is no upward movement. Studying, reading, listening is of paramount importance. Without that, we are not moving forward.
Sankarji, I have a question from sorry, Sandra, you want to ask?
I was just going to follow up with a question from Gabriela Paredes, and she is asking why, she wants to know why fear is so difficult to manage to handle, and we are living and trying to avoid it all the time. We spend our time trying to avoid it.
Next best question. Fantastic. Now, the magnitude of fear is proportional to the degree of attachment to something. If you're too much attached to your body, then death will be your bugbear. Fear and phobia of death, that's the word. That is the fear, it's become totally crazy. Phobia, it's a kind of madness. Okay? Why does that happen? Because the attachment has gone too deep. You may be attached to your son, you may be attached to your daughter, and you may be attached to your wealth. So when you die, you have the question, what am I going to do with my wealth? Who is going to steal it? Who is going to enjoy it? I don't want anybody to take it. And I could say more on this, but I don't want to go more deeply. But proportional to the attachment. proportional. See, that's why I said the life of the self within the mind, the life of the self, it's a darting, divisive energy. That is, it is separative. It does not think that Sandra and myself, we are one and the same. No, Sandra is different, I am different. I will be better than Sandra. No, I won't allow her to steal a march over me. I'll be better than her. Now, this is the activity of the self. And this self has to be dissipated and it must die. And the death of that self is your liberation. You got to go deeply into it. What is the self? How did it arise? Who are its father and mother? Got to inquire. It's not happening in a day. No, it's a lifelong quest.
In that direction as well, Natalia is also asking, on the spiritual path, how do we know that we are really understanding something and that it is not a trick from the mind?
Oh, this is a delusional question. This is a question asked by Rahu. Okay. So, see, trust, where the mind is empty, trust is a given. The mind is empty. So the mind has got intelligence. The radiation of the Atmic radiation is into that empty space. So there's intelligence. And the intelligence knows truth from bluff. Okay? You can't fool it. And if you're not a spiritual person, you have a wrong name for that. You call it intuition. You call it intuition. The people who are not in the spiritual field, the people who are in so-called secular life, they call this intuition. But immediately you will know that whether it is a bluff or whether it's the truth. And now when you don't have any trust at all, then fear will be more. Fear will be more. Fear becomes a ghost in that case. And then everything you will doubt. Everything you will doubt. Now, this is not intelligence. This is the death of intelligence. You've got to undertake the journey because the divine architecture for each one of us is different. And the divine conspiracy in each one of us is different. And the divine patronage for each one of us is different. Therefore, everybody is a unique case. And everybody has to start working. And you've got to seek answers and you must not be in rushing, tearing hurry. And it may take a long time. And you must be prepared to get into the boat. And to get into the boat and to be sincere is to save yourself.
Following up on the same subject, Guruji, Julie Baghdadi is asking, how on this path, spiritual path, how do you not become just a solitary person in this transformation? How do you both of the worlds you belong to? How do you not lose your ground? It's like being between this wing and foot.
Okay. Mr. Fear is talking. Mr. Fear is talking. And clarity will come with the death of that fear. These are not questions. This is, I call this smoke. Real questions come from intelligence, come from fire. People who have a lot of planets in the fire signs, in Jyotish, Sandraji, a lot of planets in fire signs, they're supposed to be very intelligent. Because fire is enlightenment. And fire is intelligence. Fire is anger. Okay? And fire is also ambition. The fire is all these things. But that fire is intelligence. Aries, Leo, Sagittarius, fire signs. And so this is a complete absence of intelligence. Fear is speaking. Fear is speaking. And you've got to, there's a way to deal with that fear. You've got to go more deeply into it. And you've got to work with somebody who has a good understanding and who is committed to you and who will work with you. And most people are there for the money, for the love of money. So it's a very, see,
Shall
the
I-
divine conspiracy and the divine architecture, the divine gives you a problem to solve in your life, one problem. The problem may be that I'm perpetually telling lies from the time I'm a 7-year-old boy. That could be a problem, okay? And that is bothering you no end, and you want to understand how and when you can get out of this boat. And then, why are you doing this? Or it may be that a certain person has got too much of guilt or too much of lust or too much of anger. He wants to kill other people. And that's a problem that the divine has given. And now you can't try to dispose it off, saying, I don't want it, that I won't get angry. I have anger, but I will practice non-anger, and I will try to be very silent. I'll meditate every day. No, it's not going to work. It's not going to work. You've got to deal with reality. You've got to deal with that anger. You've got to deal with that guilt or deal with that lust or whatever it is. And by dealing with it, self-knowing will arise. Self-knowing. Self-knowing arises as you face that what is. That what is some obnoxious thing on which society has thrown rotten eggs. See, society has got its own funny impressions. It goes and garlands some people who are even scoundrels. And some good people, it will ostracize them and it will say, you're very bad. You're a bad influence on the rest of us. So please go out. So society has got insane ways of dealing with various members of the human society. And so you've got to save yourself. You've got a problem. God has given you. The divine has given you something. And you've got to own up to it. That, yeah, I got it. I got this problem. I want to solve it. No, I want to see people like that. I want to see people like that who are prepared to own up and who will say, yeah, I got it. And I want to solve. And I'm not in a hurry. I'm not in a hurry. I want to study it. Now, that person is a seeker. The seeker has to be born. Not window shoppers. Window shoppers are not seekers. The seeker is a daredevil.
So we're actually coming up on our time in 5 minutes.
I know. Thank you, Dawn.
Yes, certainly. So you can certainly wind up, and then I'll close us out, and then we can decide if we're going to continue with questions, and you can let me know. So in 5 minutes, I will close us.
Yeah. I'm very charmed by your voice and by Sandra's voice, because you're so gentle and so kind and so beautifully your thing. And in response to that, I am so angry and I'm screaming at all of you. But that's my way. I have no problem with that. But thank you for being so gentle, and thank you for being so delicate and considerate to everybody and placing the questions very beautifully. Very nice. Very nice. So I think we should, I like to thank everybody and all the conveners, starting with Dawn Gill and Daniel Gill, and then Sandra Moffin and her family, and Ricardo and Natalia, and Sambashiva Ramanananda, and Gabriel and Lakshmi Kumar and his wife, and everybody, every convener has worked very seriously for this.
Hey, thank you. Thank you all so very much for joining us today.